empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to the Scoop World Order Southwest Florida Express edition. The South Florida Express might have a new quarterback as of 2 days ago. Dylan Raiola has committed to Ohio State. It was one of the worst kept secrets maybe in history that he was coming here, but he finally pulled the trigger. He's been a silent commit for over a month now. I think that he's going to be an outstanding player, a franchise-type quarterback, but we're not going to see him for a couple years. He's only going to be a junior in high school, and then he's going to have a senior year. So I imagine he'll enroll early to get a head start on that QB competition between he and whoever's left between Devin Brown, Kyle McCord, and any quarterback that we take in the 2023 class. So it's going to be real exciting. Again, it's great to get a kid, but he's not going to be here this year or next year. So we got a couple of years before we get to see him in the scarlet and gray. And as we know, a lot of things can change in 2 years. So I hope we hang on to him, and I think he's pretty rock solid to Ohio State. But it's going to be exciting to see this kid in scarlet and gray. So with that, as always, thank you guys. Another great week, another huge week. A lot of growth, a lot of great comments. Comment on who Dylan reminds you of, and maybe what recruit were you the most excited about their commitment, their pledge. Obviously some of these are very anticlimactic, so it's not really the same as if a kid's a true 50-50 and has the hats on the table. But write some of your favorite recruiting memories from the past. I know signing day isn't what it used to be. I wish it was a little bit more insane. But with that, I'm going to bring in Nevada. Nevada, I'm going to start off with you, actually. What is one of your favorite recruiting stories where it came down to the wire, maybe came down to an old national signing day and the hats are on the table, and a guy that maybe was a lean somewhere else picks Ohio State or doesn't pick Ohio State? What's one of your favorite stories from the past with all the years of recruiting you followed?
Yeah, well, for me, it's always been the Terrell Pryor. The Terrell Pryor one was really just one of the great spectacles for people that weren't around during those days. They just, you have a kid that went all the way up to signing day, and then that actually went beyond signing day. Just so much intrigue, and so many rumors about Oregon and Penn State, and that one. I had that one from the beginning. I had an impeccable source, and it was just fun watching the national guys just flail around. I mean, like every day there'd be like a different story about, he's going here, he's going there. And I don't think there's ever been quite a recruitment quite like Pryor's. I mean, Pryor's was the one for the books, and it was the one that set the gold standard for recruiting craziness. That's for sure. It was nice to be on the right side of that one.
Yeah, I think that has to be the craziest, biggest recruiting story. I mean, obviously he didn't sign on signing day, pushed it back a little bit. I think, people say that, you can't have like a class leader help out, but like, Michael Brewster going over and watching his basketball games and, with those guys, like, I mean, there was some wild stuff going on, and it was amazing when we got him. Cause I still remember where I was when we found out we got Terrell Pryor, because we were in Acapulco, and I was with Anthony Gonzalez and Todd Beckman, and we were walking on the beach, and Gonzo has got a bald head, so he sticks out more than the rest of us, and we're just kind of walking along on the beach in Acapulco. Some dude comes running up to us and says, "We got Terrell Pryor! We got Pryor!" And I looked at Todd, and it looked like someone shot his dog or something. I mean, it was not good, but I just remember sitting there. I was like, we're in the middle of Mexico right now, like on a little vacation, and it was only a weekend, but I was like, oh my god, I couldn't believe that someone actually recognized us, and then they were following recruiting, because it wasn't as easy as it was back then to follow it. So I don't know, man. It's recruiting is a wild thing. I kind of miss those old signing days, because those old signing days were something else, because you had just one day and that was it. And now with the 2 days and early enrollees and all that, it takes a lot of the drama out of what used to be probably the funnest day of the year if you're a recruiting fan. It's National Signing Day, circa 10 years ago. I remember with Urban in 12, we're sitting there on the big screen watching, some of these guys, and it was incredible. So I'm going to get into the show. Start this up. So, the Dylan Raiola impact is something that's going to be pretty dramatic, I feel like, because a lot of these skill guys, they want to play with a franchise type quarterback. He is just that. You've seen a lot of the reaction from guys on social media. It's so easy to see who's excited. Guys like Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate, these guys that we'll talk about in the next segment. But tell me a little bit about getting a kid who's this young as a class leader for the 2024 class, already in the fold and already working to start recruiting players around him. Tell me about that impact.
Yeah, well, I think you're always, like you said, you're always looking for that first piece, and you're looking for that guy that's going to be kind of the spiritual leader, kind of the figurehead for a class. And generally when it's the quarterback's the highest profile position on the team, it's a position that you're looking for leadership. And Raiola, kind of checks all those boxes, and this one's going to be particularly intriguing because, we've talked about this on podcasts before. We talked about this about a month and a half ago. We said this was the first domino that had to fall. And when this domino fell, that there could be kind of an avalanche of other things, and it could have some far-reaching impacts to the Ohio State class that go, beyond just Dominic Raiola of getting, a five-star number one player in the country type of impact. So this was a big day for Ohio State, and I think the impact is going to be profound going forward.
Yeah, and we'll get right into some of the impact. Obviously, two of the hottest names right now are Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, two wide receivers for the South Florida Express. They're going to be coming into town in the mid to late June area for their official visits. A lot of smoke with Carnell Tate in Tennessee, NIL stuff. Ennis is pretty much locked up to Ohio State at this point, which is amazing because, again, a year ago at camp when I was standing there, everyone's like he's going to Georgia or he's going to Oklahoma. There's no chance he's coming to Ohio State. And then, Lincoln Riley takes off after he commits to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's not even in the picture anymore. So it's kind of a USC and Ohio State race, but it looks like it's going to be Ohio State. I think we get Carnell Tate too, but talk a little bit about, because this is something that's changed from the olden days, Nevada, but talk a little bit about like the impact of social media and these big commitment ceremonies and the impact that it has on these kids now, because, this didn't exist when I was in school. If a kid committed, it was like you found out on Rivals or Scout or somewhere, but there was no where to say, hey, congrats, fam, or hey, great job, or hey, can't wait to link up, or whatever. And talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of a new wave thing where these kids all can connect to each other despite living multiple time zones away.
Well, I think you hit it the nail on the head. I think these kids are all just much more, they talk about social media and how it connects people. Well, these kids are a lot more connected. They've got a lot more contact. They've got a lot more frequent contact than they've ever had before, and they form these kind of cliques and alliances. And I think that's why these things are more important than ever. And I think with Ennis and Tate, what's been interesting, and I think this is really something that's really just kind of come together here in the last couple of weeks, was that there were some NIL concerns on both players, specifically with Tate, but with both players regarding, could Ohio State meet the NIL requirements for these guys, kind of the minimum requirements to keep them interested, to get them into the fold? Would Ohio State get Raiola with this again? Would these be the next dominoes that fell? And the information that I have is that Ohio State's been able to pull it together. Ohio State's been able to make these packages attractive enough that I think that it looks good for both players. And in fact, I'm ready to call both players to Ohio State. And I think Ohio State's done an outstanding job from a recruiting standpoint. But getting Raiola was really the first domino that had to fall in order to get him. And I don't think that they're done with the South Florida Express beyond that. I think this was what we were talking about, 6 weeks ago regarding, could they take a clean sweep of the South Florida Express to Ohio State? And I actually think it's going to happen against all odds, and to the great credit of Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, primarily, I think they're going to make a clean sweep of the South Florida Express, and I'm going to call that right now.
Yeah, and that's one of the real interesting things with these kids is, with social media and with these camps, one of the things that people don't really talk about is how, a lot of these guys start to link up. They meet each other at camps. Last year at this time, when we were at camp, Carnell Tate was not part of South Florida Express. He was a kid. He was a raw kid, loved Ohio State, really, really, high upside kid, but he wasn't a South Florida Express kid. But these kids kind of linked up together. They kind of got to know each other. He's at IMG, and they're like, well, do you want to come play with us this year? And that's something that is kind of a phenomenon that's funny with these 7-on-7 teams, because you've got some guys that are really good players, and they end up kind of getting picked up. It's kind of like a pickup basketball game. You pick up a receiver, you get a new receiver, you get a new quarterback, and something that's going to be real interesting, and it's very apparent, is that Dylan Raiola is going to be a new member of the South Florida Express. Now, I think he's going to be a part-time member, as in he's not going to be flying to do tournaments in Florida, but when they go to Vegas in June, I would place a decent amount of money that he'll be their quarterback out there, and it'll be fascinating to watch. I mean, the players were all over the commitment. As you can see, the South Florida Express Twitter, they're retweeting his commitment. They're retweeting all of him, retweeting all the guys, and it's just like I said, it's a different world. And when you're in the cutthroat world of 7-on-7 football, you're always looking for some higher end talent, some better players, better receivers, better quarterbacks, because it makes you harder to defend. It's just like kind of the Ohio State thing where, when you've got a bunch of 5-star receivers, there's two ways to look at that. You can say, well, it's going to be hard to play there, or it's going to be hard for me to get double teamed there. Because if you're Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you've got Olave and Wilson on the outside, like no one's going to double team you. So you're going to be like wide open basically every play. So that's kind of the thing that these kids are figuring out, that don't be scared of going somewhere where there's a loaded up receiving room. You should go there and get to work and learn, and then realize that they can't double team you every single play like will happen in high school or the NFL or whatever. But like when you go to like a loaded room, it's actually a really good thing. So I'm excited to see what these guys do together. If Dylan, really does play in a couple tournaments with the South Florida Express, and it's going to be interesting, because I think that's kind of like a backdoor method of recruiting kids, is like join the 7-on-7 team. And now it's like, we got, Fletcher, Q Fletcher, who's the running back who's from South Florida Express, and get Tate and Ennis, and then you get Smith and Trader, who they're the juniors. They're not the seniors. They're the next two guys in line for South Florida Express. And it's like, you get that pipeline going by, hey, I'll go be the quarterback for the guys for a tournament. Why not? I mean, they're begging Dylan to play with them, so you might as well go play with them and do some recruiting while you're out there. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, or we're going to talk about, is that this came out. It was very interesting. Fox Sports put this chart out, and it talks about the transfer ratings for the players that have transferred into programs, portal guys or graduate transfers that transferred into schools. Nevada, this is something that you've talked ad nauseum about. Ohio State needs to be more aggressive in the portal. Obviously, we're not in the top 10. We got a couple of kids. We got the kid from Arizona State, Chip, who's the linebacker. And we got the safety from Oklahoma State, but that wasn't, obviously with 2 commits, that's not enough for us to get to the average. But, you see Bama right at the top. You see Texas, obviously probably inflated with Quinn Ewers and a few other guys. But talk a little bit about these numbers, because you've talked ad nauseum about USC adding 15 portal commits. But talk a little bit about this. Maybe I think one thing that stands out is the lack of presence in the Big Ten. There's one team from the Big Ten on there, but what sticks out to you on this chart?
Well, I mean, again, what you have to remember, this is a basic philosophy thing. And right now, what Ryan Day is saying is, and this is something that, I've ascribed to this theory, so I don't disagree with Day on this point, is that he wants to kind of go to war with his guys, and that he's going to, look to his own depth chart and the guys they've recruited first before they bring in guys from the outside to, compete for jobs. And I think he's concerned about the cultural impact of these, mass transfers. And that's why Ohio State doesn't have a presence. That's why, frankly, none of the Big Ten has a presence on this board. They are going a different direction than Alabama and some of these other big schools regarding use of the transfer portal. And, my concern is, while I applaud the loyalty that Day is showing to the current roster, and like I said, that feels good to me from a core value standpoint. I have part of me is kind of evolving on this, and I'm concerned that we're going to get left behind in terms of an overall talent level, because these other schools are going out there and they're kind of reshuffling. It's like playing poker where you keep getting new cards. You throw in two cards and you get two more, and you throw in three cards and you get two more. It's like, yeah, you want to be loyal to that original hand you have, but at some point, the guy that keeps throwing in his cards and getting new cards is going to have a better hand than you do. So I'm really, like I said, my position on this is somewhat evolved, and I think it's going to be a delicate dance for Day. I think Day's trying to be really selective, go for those uber talented kids like the Justin Fields or the other kids that they're going to bring in. But I'm just worried that maybe we're not being aggressive enough in this area, and that could potentially present a competitive disadvantage for us in the future.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, Alabama being at the top is a surprise because they are always at the forefront of basically every new cutting edge way to make their roster better. They always lead the way that way. But I think that part of the problem or an issue with Ohio State is when you have a really young team last year and you have a lot of guys returning that frankly aren't going to get beat out. Like CJ Stroud will not get beat out. Trey Henderson's not going to get beat out. Paris Johnson's not getting beat out. DeJuan Jones not getting beat out. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. not getting beat out. So I think that, next year, it's almost like, next year will be an interesting year to see if we can go shopping, for instance, for offensive tackles. If there's always going to be a couple of really good kids that either graduate and want to transfer, or kids that are like freshman All-Americans who want to transfer. And do we have a real shot at them then? And then we say, hey, we're losing two tackles. We really need a tackle. You started at tackle last year. We love your film. Come to Ohio State and start for us. Like, does that happen? Because I just think that, in some of the areas, like if you're a defensive end, do you see Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and Zach Harrison? Like, how many snaps am I going to get? Maybe like a D tackle, maybe linebacker. We had a transfer there, a transfer in at safety, but some of these rooms. I mean, obviously, you can always use another mega talented player who pushes your number one corner down to a number two and whatever. But I don't know how many of those guys were in the portal. I mean, Bama snagged a bunch of them. It seemed like the running back from Georgia Tech is fantastic. They got their left tackle from Vanderbilt, 3-year starter. So they've gotten some really, really good commits. Obviously, they got our hero Elias Ricks, who we talk about seemingly year over year for no reason. We never get him up here, but he's at Bama now from LSU. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if next year when we have some guys that go pro and have a little bit more roster turnover, and frankly, we're going to have like more needs because we don't really have a ton of needs. You could probably have better D tackles. I think our offensive line is fine. We're never going to be 25 deep like everybody dreams of. I think tight end's fine. We went after the tight end that was from Oklahoma that ended up going to South Carolina with Spencer Rattler. But, if you're a tight end, do you really want to come play in this offense? Not really. I mean, Jeremy Ruckert was a freak show, and he went third round because we don't feature the tight ends ever. So, but I just thought this was interesting. Do you think in the future, Nevada, that Ohio State will be more aggressive in the transfer portal, or do you think that they're going to maintain their status quo?
No, I think they're going to have to get more aggressive. But we've talked about this before. But the three areas that I will predict that Ohio State will be the most active in, and frankly, it just because the nature of the positions is going to be the quarterback position, offensive line, and the specialists, punters and kickers, because only one guy's play, or the offensive line, as we talked about, like it's generally a 5-man rotation, and you don't go deep on that, so you're not developing depth, or you're not really playing depth. So and you look at who has Ohio State gotten: Justin Fields, quarterback; Jonah Jackson, offensive lineman; Noah Ruggles, kicker; Parker Lewis, kicker from USC. You know what I'm saying? I think those are going to be the three areas where you're going to get and you're not going to have as much movement on the other position groups. But those three position groups, I think you should always be looking. If you've got spots open, if you've got you don't have the pieces that you want, that's where you'll be mining. But I think it'll be primarily focused on those three position groups going forward, and we'll see if that stays the form.
Yeah, I just while we wrap this thing up, I just put on some Tate and Ennis film. Obviously, this is Tate up versus Bishop Sycamore, the beloved Bishop Sycamore High School. Here he's dunking on a kid, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the summer shakes out, because obviously it's about to be camp season in June. It's like one of the best months of the year to be on Buckeye Scoop is camp season, because you really get to see these kids up close and personal. It'll be interesting to see what kids that are already offered come and work out again. Because I always, if you're offered by Ohio State, like, do you really need to come work out again? I mean, I get you want to be a competitor and stuff, but it's expensive to come up here from Florida. You come up here and do the same drills that you could do in Florida. But want to be around the players, be around the coaches. That's something that I think it's changed a little bit from when I was getting recruited. Like, a lot of times when I was getting recruited, if a kid was offered and he was touted, like, you didn't see him at camp. Like, my senior year, I didn't see David Patterson, I didn't see Louis Irizarry, guys that were stone cold Ohio State, leans or offers. Like, they didn't come to camp like to come compete. They already had competed. It's like they already got the prize, the offer. Like, the guys that were mostly camp, I mean, there were a lot of guys that were already offered, but a lot of guys, they were fighting for the offer. Like, I was the guy that was fighting for an offer. Like, Brian Hartline was the guy, when he came to camp, it was because he wasn't offered and he was fighting for an offer. There's so it'll be interesting to see. These kids will come up and take an official. Obviously, the kids going into their senior year, it's kind of nice that they can do this summer official, just because it's a little bit of a it's the weather's nicer. I think that there's less stress for the coaches because they don't have to do it around a game weekend. I think that a lot of the game weekends are just completely miserable. If you've got to play Michigan on Saturday and you've got to host a kid on Friday, and you got to get up for a noon game, and you might lose the game, and then you got to go out to dinner with the kid, and if you win, it's amazing. But you just it kind of can take your eye off the ball sometimes when you got to host these kids and make them feel special, but then at the same time you got to be getting ready to beat Michigan or beat Notre Dame, or I mean, the marquee games are the ones that are going to bring in the most official visitors. So but yeah, I don't know, I'm excited for camp season. It'll be interesting to see in June if Dylan plays with the South Florida Express, which is looking like they're projecting for him to do that. Any final thoughts? I mean, I think that the South Florida Express pipeline to Ohio State's about to be ramped up, but and you're calling your shot. We're going to get all these skill guys, right, Nevada?
Yep, calling it. South Florida Express guys are going to go en masse to Ohio State, and it's going to be one of the biggest hauls that we've ever had out of South Florida this year. Calling the shot right now.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think anytime you can get in with a unit like the South Florida Express, who's the number one 7-on-7 team in the country, it just makes sense because they always have the top tier guys in South Florida, and plus they can give you legitimate feedback. Our coaching staff has really good relationships with those guys. They can really give, hey, you're in the game with this kid, or you're not in the game with this kid, or this kid's a game player, this kid is not a game player. This is Carnell last year. He's thinner. Obviously, he's bulked up a little bit. But this is funny because I mean, I don't want to say he hadn't blown up yet because, they had us in Notre Dame and stuff, but he's really blown up since this past season. When we were watching this, Brandon Innes was the number one receiver in the country. And when we were standing there watching, we're like, well, there's not much difference between the two. And Tate might even have more upside just because he's quicker. Brandon Innes reminds me of Jarvis Landry. A lot of Browns fans know, not really a huge burner, but ultra competitive, great hands, tough as nails, a lot of passion, doesn't take any plays off. But he's not a burner like Carnell Tate is. So it's kind of what do you want in a receiver? But again, his body control, his hands, just absolutely fantastic. And I think that it's good to have different kind of like different tools in the toolbox, like different receivers for different things. And he's a physical guy. He really can do it all. Like I love watching the kid just because he's so competitive and he's so he loves to win. He takes every rep seriously, and not every kid's like that. Like a lot of people take that for granted, but this is on some field 7-on-7. The video's a little stretched out, but these guys are they're out on some 7-on-7 field, and he's burning past guys. So for a guy that can't run, he looks pretty elusive there. But let's wrap this up. Any final thoughts, Nevada, as we wrap up the transfer portal and South Florida Express edition of the show?
No, I just think it's different down there because Ohio State doesn't really have a big 7-on-7 culture, doesn't really have a big spring football culture, and I understand why. I think there's some really legitimate reasons why, given the structure of Ohio football, why that is. But I think that the whole 7-on-7 culture really provides just a different flavor, and it's something that it's that's why you have to go outside of Ohio for a lot of these skill positions, is because we don't have that there in Ohio. And so, getting a quarterback from Arizona and a bunch of wide receivers from down in Florida, that's certainly the way that we've profited with that strategy before, and it's certainly going to pay big dividends in the future.
No, I wish that somehow they had offensive linemen too, because they got some monsters down there. But as we know, the big guys don't like to leave the South very often. So, but no, this has been a great show. So I'll wrap this thing up. Again, we appreciate you guys. It's been a crazy week on Buckeye Scoop. Obviously Dylan Raiola committing at 11 o'clock at night East Coast time kept us on the board, hitting refresh all night. But we've had some monster content. Big inside information, big news, big nuggets. Summer conditioning is starting in a week. The kids are off right now. It's graduated. They got a little bit of time off, then they'll be back at it, getting the screws put to them by Mickey Marotti and the strength staff. Camps come up in a couple weeks, so never been a better time to join Buckeye Scoop, because, man, it is crazy right now. And I'm just telling you, like, our board is on fire. Easily the most active board in the Ohio State space. We have unbelievable community, great people, great entertaining discourse with people, and can't wait to hop back on it. So appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. If you could give this thing a like, give us a subscription, comment on your favorite recruiting commits, moments, maybe when you had your heart broke by some guy, people bring out Rico McCoy and Fred Davis and some of these old school names that I remember because they were about my age or maybe a little bit younger. So it's fun to kind of go back memory lane, because it was almost 20 years ago. So appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Buckeye Scoop family. You guys have a great night. Go Bucks.